So beginning with crochet, I'm going to show you some basic steps to hold the yarn and how to move your crochet hook. So when you hold your yarn, I'm going to be doing it with my left hand because I'm crocheting with my right hand. There needs to be a careful balance of having tension as well as allowing the yarn to be able to move through your fingers effectively so that it feeds the hook and the work the hook is doing. So to start off with, I'm going to make a slip stitch, and or slip knot, the way I do that is to have the end of the yarn in my left hand, like so. I'm going to loop the yarn over and then take the piece of yarn that's attached to the ball of wool underneath and through, and then pull that through to make a slip knot. Then put your crochet hook into the loop that you've created. Now when you have a look at this loop, when you look at it closely, you'll see that it's not a circle, it's like an upside down raindrop, and you can see that at the bottom of that loop it goes quite pointy. Now this is important to remember because when pulling the crochet hook back through the loop, as you're going to be pulling hook and another piece of yarn through that loop there, remember it's really important to have the hook, the pointy, the hook end of your hook there pointing downwards in order to pull it through effectively. If you have your hook facing to the side or up or round to the left, it's likely to latch on and not pull through properly. So bear that in mind when starting out. Now the two different ways I teach to hold the yarn when starting off is to loop the yarn, so I've got the work here in my right hand, is to loop the yarn backwards and forwards through your hands like so, and then finish up holding it with your right hand, and thereby you create this little level of tension for the yarn, but it can pull through really easily. I'll show you that again. So put your hand out over your pinky, round your ring finger, over the middle finger and back round over your index finger to end up holding the work with your middle finger. Now I think it's really important to hold your work with the middle finger for this reason. When you do so, if you can copy me right now, that would be really helpful. If you move your index finger up and down, you'll see that it's really free-flowing. You're able to do that without any hindrance whatsoever. If you were to swap it and hold the work between your thumb and index finger and try and move your middle finger, you will notice that there is a tightness across the back of the hand because there is actually a tendon running down the back of your hand and arm there that restricts the middle finger's movement. So this is why I'm very strict with people that I teach crochet to initially and say it's important that you hold your work with your middle finger and not your index finger. No matter how tempting it is to do so, that is really important. And the reason why it is important to be able to have your index finger free to be able to move up and down is because this is what will control the flow of yarn as it's coming through onto your work. Now I know it might seem a bit over the top for me to explain all these things, but I am a great believer in having a strong foundation when learning a new skill. If you get the foundations right, you are able to build on those, and in terms of crochet, you'll be able to pick up speed later on. So I will go over the first way that I like to start, running the yarn through the fingers like so. Then the other way is where you loop the yarn twice around the pinky, round the back of the hand, and then to the middle finger to hold. And when you stretch out then the index finger, no matter how you're holding the yarn, it should be taut. You should be able to see where it is. It shouldn't be loose, hanging down. It should be taut so that you can see what you're doing. Okay, moving on then to actually getting the yarn through the loop that you've created. So I have here a crochet hook that has got a bit of a body to it. I find this ergonomically, it's a bit more helpful. And to start off with, I've got my hook facing me. Okay. And what I'm going to do is push my hook into the back of the yarn, do a little kind of spin movement where I just sort of twist it to latch it onto my hook like so, and then I'm turning that hook downwards. I'm just going to move my hand so you can see what I'm doing, downwards to pull that yarn through, and as soon as it's through like so, I'm going to turn my hook to face upwards so that it doesn't fall off the hook. And then I'm going to go in again, but bear in mind when you get that yarn through for the first time, make sure that the loop that you've just created does have a little bit of space to it. If you find that the yarn is really tight around the hook, it might be that you've pulled out with your index finger and pulled that really tight. So to balance it out, you need to just gently relax your index finger and pull gently on your hook so that you know that you've got space to pull through the next stitch. So I'm going to show that again. Hook onto the back of the yarn, loop it and pull it through and back up again. So hook to the back of the yarn, hook facing downwards, pull through, and as soon as it's through, face up again. Now you'll notice here I've created a three chains here. That's 1, 2, 3. And so this is starting to get a bit far away from my thumb and finger grip. So I'm going to move my thumb and finger up so it's at the base of my work. And it's important to get into the habit of holding the work at the base of what you're doing. So I'm going to show you that again. Hook facing into the back of the yarn and loop round, pull through and up again. Hook to the back of the yarn, face down and pull through. So this is a really good way to start crocheting. I would suggest you just keep practicing creating these chains until you're at a point where you feel that all the chains you're creating are of a similar size. Don't worry if they're not to start off with. Sometimes you may end up with long ones, sometimes you may end up with short ones as you're practicing. That's okay. Just keep going until you find that you've got yourself into a rhythm. And remember to keep moving your hand further and further up. Now the other thing to bear in mind is I've now got a taut piece of yarn here, again from my ball here. Always keep this yarn nice and loose. So take off some and have it ready to use, because if it gets tight from the ball of wool, then you're going to also be causing more tension and you're likely to end up with quite tight work. So just a reminder before I go, loop the yarn round your pinky, round the back of your hand, and then hold with your thumb and middle finger, or loop it round like so and hold again. When you've got the yarn around your pinky, do keep your pinky and your ring finger together as you're working, but slightly relax it when you can feel that yarn is being pulled through, so that it's constantly then feeding the work that you're creating with your hook and the loops that you're pulling the yarn through. So off you go now. Go and practice making your chains, and do come back again to learn how to start creating stitches with your hook and your yarn.